I'm Edward Warfield. I'm the publisher of Citybiz, and I'm honored today to interview Kevin Fitzpatrick, who is a partner at the Capital Group and CEO of Government Technology Insurance Company, as well as Eric Mothershead, who is a partner at the Capital Group. Welcome, Kevin and Eric.
Thank you, Ed.
Kevin, can you provide an introduction to the Capital Group?
Certainly. No, happy to. I'll give you a little bit of background on us. I'm one of the guys that started the company. This is our 25th anniversary. I don't feel that old, but we were all pretty young kids back when we started the company. I was working for a big Fortune 500 company at the time in Washington, D.C. and up in New York. And we made a strategic decision that we didn't necessarily want to follow that career path. And that was 1996 when we decided to start what was then a very small insurance operation here in Washington, D.C. And we called it the Capital Group. At the time, we were anything but Govcon and federal contracting centric. We were small business based. If you had a pet store with a dozen employees back in 1996, you were a VIP client back then. But over the years, we grew into the Govcon marketplace. The intention originally was to build a vertical within the company that focused on federal contractors and service providers. Ultimately, what ended up happening was we built an entire company around that industry. The cornerstone of it was the delivery of healthcare and employee benefits into the GovCon space. We quickly wrapped our arms around it, embraced it, and understood that marketplace and all of the nuances associated with insuring federal contractors. A few years after establishing a foothold in the employee benefits side of the insurance equation, we moved into commercial insurance, which is generally thought of as everything liability, professional liability, errors and omissions, directors and officers, cyber, work comp, etc. there. And we quickly found ourselves in a position where we were collecting millions of dollars in premium on behalf of all of the big box insurance companies who we represented at the time, and simultaneously paying out next to nothing in claims. And it was a very interesting dynamic. We weren't certain if we were just really lucky or if we had clients who were really lucky. So we hired a big actuarial firm called Milliman, perhaps one of the largest in the world, and they spent about 9 months studying it and essentially came back and gave us the answer that we thought we already knew, is that federal contractors inherently carry a lower risk profile than their commercial counterparts. However, when you're a big box insurance company, you don't really have any difference in the rates in terms of what you charge the marketplace. If you're doing IT on the commercial side or IT on the federal side, they view it as the same risk, when in reality, the risk is like this. It's inverted. So armed with that nugget of knowledge and our actuarial study, it was about a dozen years ago that we formed what's now known as GovTech, the Government Technology Insurance Company. And that is a sister company to the Capital Group that delivers liability insurance directly into the federal marketplace. The technical term is it does it at a rate which is actuarially reflective of the exposure. In layman's terms, we're the Geico model. We tend to be less expensive because we've specialized anywhere from 20, 30, 40% less expensive than those big box carriers, while simultaneously flowing down all of the FAR regulations and the specific insurance pieces that marketplace requires and needs. Our third vertical within the Capital Group, very quickly, is we also have an RIA, a registered investment advisory firm. We manage about $1 billion right now of assets, the vast majority of which are in the 401k space. it's a really good fit for the employee benefit side of the practice there. Not that every client does everything with us, but in today's day and age, folks like the opportunity for a one-stop shop.
So the Kappa Group was founded by you and Joe Appa. How did you and Joe come together, and how did your vision become aligned?
So we were both like I mentioned, we were both two young guys back then in our 20s, working at a big insurance company. And as glorious as a career as that sounded, we decided to take a different path. And that path was to go down the path of really entrepreneurship, of small business there. And that's what we are. That's what we were. And the core of that messaging, I think, resonated with our client base, who is primarily small and mid-sized federal contractors. We're not insuring the General Dynamics, the Lockheeds, or the Khakis of the world, but we are insuring a lot of their subs all the way down to the folks every week, every month, who are starting new federal contracting operations. The veterans, the folks in the 8A community. We see ourselves as an incubator to those individuals to help them through the early years with subject matter expertise on their employee benefits, on their commercial insurance, and certainly on their 401ks.
And so can you drill a little deeper into the services that are actually provided by the Capital Group?
One of the things that we found early on here in dealing with the federal marketplace is, especially in Washington, D.C., it is very much a white-collar town. Federal contractors are engaged in the delivery of professional services, network IT, infrastructure, management-style contracts. It doesn't tend to be very cost of goods heavy. Federal contractors here in D.C. are not necessarily building ships and welding tanks together. So what does that mean? Next to payroll, that means we are generally the second or third largest expense that federal contractors have. The delivery of employee benefits there. And in the world of federal contracting, the ability to control the cost of that fringe spend has a huge impact ultimately on what a federal contractor's wrap rate is. And we all know a lower wrap rate is going to be better than a higher wrap rate there, making the client more competitive, being able to serve the government's mission more effectively. So we see our role as a very strategic role in helping folks to keep that monster cost down, and under control and predictable.
And so the Capital Group recently launched the Govcon Health platform. Can you tell us the origins of that, where you saw the opportunity was, and some of the key features of that platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the longest time, and still to this day, Washington, D.C. Has been a very big, what we call fully insured town. And what I mean by fully insured is when you're structuring a health insurance policy, a corporate health insurance policy, where the spend can often easily, for a modest-sized company, run into the millions of dollars, plural, there. It's being done on a fully insured basis. You're paying the same premium every single month to the big box insurance companies. Aetna, United, Cigna, CareFirst, Kaiser, you name it there. And you're not getting a lot of transparency in the middle market there as to your claims, as to your financials, and ultimately as to the reasoning behind whatever your renewal is. If they deliver a 5% or a 35% renewal, you don't have financial transparency and clarity into that. And that has been a real struggle for the marketplace there, to be able to absorb what are arguably relatively big hits to the cost of healthcare and ultimately fringe and wrap there. So we made a strategic decision a few years back to embrace what's called the alternative funding space. In years past, this was largely the domain of very large companies. All the companies I mentioned earlier, Lockheed, GD, CACI, Mantech, et cetera, all are alternatively funded or self-funded. They are funding their own claims out of there. And when you fund your own claims, by its very nature, you have 100% transparency. You're literally able to see where every penny in the ecosystem goes there. So Govcon Health was designed to bring that platform that large federal contractors have used very successfully for many, many years down to the middle market there. So a company that has 100, 150, 200 employees can easily and safely self-fund, have full transparency into all of their claims and all of their financials. So that ultimately, when it comes time to do a renewal, let's say, which happens on an annual basis, there's no more surprises there. You're not waiting for what the insurance company is going to drop on you and then begin a protracted negotiation there. To a certain degree, you're in control of your own destiny there. So that's one of the core features of the Govcon Health platform is what we call consortium-funded stop-loss insurance. It's a big insurance word there, but at the end of the day, self-funding sounds scary, all right? If you're a group and we talk self-funding, the first thing that comes to mind, well, what if we have a colleague or an employee that gets cancer or has a premature baby and it's $1 million claim? Well, we don't want to pay $1 million as a company towards one claim just because something unfortunate happened to one of our colleagues. Well, all self-funded plans purchase stop-loss insurance. What does that stop-loss insurance do? It does exactly what it describes. It stops the loss of any one particular claim or a collection of claims at a particular level. It is at its core insurance there. And Govcon Health Consortium funds the purchase of that stop-loss insurance for the federal contractor marketplace. Why is that advantageous? Well, what we're doing is we're pooling together all of the different clients, plural, premium there that they would otherwise and normally pay to stop-loss insurance carriers, each one independent and on its own. We are pooling those together. We are going to one stop-loss carrier en masse with a significantly larger bucket of premium dollars now. And what are we able to do? We're able to negotiate better terms for it there. So as opposed to just a company with 100 employees going out and trying to secure its own stop-loss coverage, now we've banded together with hundreds of different companies there in the same bucket, and those companies are going out to purchase the insurance, in mass.
And so what have been some of the milestones for Govcon Health since its launch, and what are the next big milestones on the horizon?
Using the Govcon Health platform, we now have the ability to take the message outside of the greater Washington, D.C. area. We know there are Govcon hotspots all over the country. San Antonio, Texas, San Diego, Norfolk, Virginia, Kansas City, Huntsville, Alabama. All of those areas arguably have billions and billions of dollars of federal contracting flowing through it. To put it in perspective here, as big as we think the Washington, D.C. area is, in particular Fairfax, what one could argue the epicenter of federal contracting in the Tyson's Corner area there, they get a little bit shy of $2 billion a year, federal contracting dollars. Huntsville, Alabama gets $2.3 billion federal contracting dollars each year. It kind of puts it in perspective that there is a larger world outside of Washington, D.C. Here that Govcon Health is really just scratched the surface here in the greater D.C. area.
And how did the Affordable Care Act affect health insurance options for government contractors?
When ACA came along, all right, ACA really spoke to the fully insured marketplace there. It heaped upon it regulation and tax and fee there that is still resonating to this day. Roughly 5% of every fully insured premium dollar that a company pays is tied up in 4 different ACA and state insurance taxes and fees, the 2 largest of which do not apply when you partially self-fund or alternatively fund a healthcare plan. So when you shift ecosystems as a company, and as a general rule, you're shifting when you have at least 50 or more employees. The Govcon Health platform doesn't necessarily apply to small groups. You need to reach certain critical mass, and about 50 employees is that jumping off point. So when you leave that fully insured ecosystem that is all ACA compliant there, you're going into the partially self-funded ecosystem. You are shedding 2 of the largest taxes and fees that equate to about 4.5% of your premium. So in round numbers, for every $1 million of healthcare you spend when you're partially self-funded, you're saving about $45,000 on day one in fees and taxes that then drop directly back to the company's bottom line.
And so how did COVID create changes in health insurance options for companies within the government marketplace, in particular for self-funded plans such as the Govcon Health?
Well, COVID really magnified and, in my opinion, accelerated the change from being primarily a fully insured town into looking at and considering alternative and self-funded ecosystems there. There was a lot of concern early on in terms of what COVID was going to do to corporate healthcare plans. Were the claims associated with COVID going to begin to drive premiums through the roof? Well, ultimately, what we saw, especially in the first year or so into COVID, was the opposite happened. COVID, unfortunately, has disproportionately affected the folks in the 65 plus crowd, even the 70 plus crowd there. That's where a lot of the hospitalizations in the early days and still continue to come from, vaccinations aside there. The vast majority of those individuals, however, are, as a general rule, covered outside of corporate healthcare plans. They are covered by government programs or retiree programs, Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera. So what we saw in the early days was a cratering of claims in the world of corporate healthcare on both the fully insured side and the partially self-funded side. If we remember a year or so ago back, people didn't want to leave their house. They didn't want to go to the doctor. You definitely didn't want to go near an emergency room there. Hospitals had tents set up outside there. However, what we saw in the fully insured world, the claims were not a reflection, the decrease in claims were not a reflection of the renewals. We were still continuing to see increases in premiums when claims were going like this. It didn't make a lot of sense in the fully insured side. On the partially self-funded side, the clients who were in that ecosystem saw dollar for dollar a dramatic decrease in their claims and in their costs, because they are responsible for paying those claims up to a certain level. And if those claims don't exist, they don't exist. That's dollars that doesn't have to leave a company's coffers. So what we've seen in the last 24 months is the federal marketplace recognizing this and really embracing that alternative funding and that partially self-funding methodology.
Also, Edwin, if I may,
Go ahead, please.
government contracting has always been decentralized, corporate HQ in Northern Virginia, but employees all over the country, sometimes all over the world. With COVID and a lot of the government agencies telling government contractors, keep your people at home until we report back, it's become even more decentralized. So while Kevin is focusing on the financials and how we're able to help government contractors lower their RAP rates, one of the things that Govcon Health is also doing is we're rolling out unlimited telehealth. People are at home, and if they're feeling sick, but they're not sure if they have COVID or not, isn't it nice to do a video visit with a doctor and talk to the physician about your issues? And then the physician can direct you to either an urgent care or to your primary care physician or to a specialist. So what we're rolling out is an increased employee experience with unlimited telehealth, as well as unlimited mental health services. We know in the COVID world, people are working from home. They're caring for sick family members. They may be educating their children at home as well. So anxiety, depression, things of that nature is definitely increasing. So we are offering unlimited telehealth as well.
And I've done a couple of telehealth interviews. Are there any specific telehealth companies that you partnered with?
Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of different vendors out there. HealthJoy is one of our premier partners. They really have a nice platform, and we're working with a few others that have different bells and whistles. But HealthJoy is the one that we recommend a lot.
Well, thank you, Eric. So what are the growth plans for the Capital Group and for Government Tech Insurance Company?
We had a really big change back in August 1st of 2021, and we partnered and were acquired by a company called BRP, Baldwin Risk Partners, based out of Tampa, company that had recently IPO'd but had a long history of providing insurance in the state of Florida. And we joined the Baldwin Risk family because we liked the model. They are in the process, even as we speak, 18 months into it, they're aggregating together uber high-performing insurance operations in different strategic marketplaces around the country. And Baldwin Risk Partners did not have a federal contracting division, did not have a footprint here in Washington, D.C., and we made an excellent fit to kind of fill that niche there and to be able now to not only take and expand the Govcon Health platform here regionally in D.C., but we now have over 20 offices nationally, supported by 2,000 colleagues in different strategic locations, many of which are Govcon hotspots here through the Baldwin Risk family now.
And so are there any insure tech companies out there on the horizon in the Govcon space that we should be looking at or that make you a little nervous at night?
It is an industry that does have significant barriers to entry, and that's a good thing for us right now there. Certainly, we're not resting around on our laurels because of that, but for an insurance player to come into the Govcon space there, as we all know, first off, you have to learn a new language, You really do. You have to speak Govcon to them, and it's difficult. It's not easy. You have to immerse yourself in that world because it is a world unlike any other there. Now, with that said, we're going to continue to develop and innovate, but the Govcon Health platform is going to provide a significant vehicle for federal contractors to pull down the cost of healthcare. It just is. We have a lifetime worth of work ahead of us, not only here in Washington, D.C., but adding in all the other hotspots.
And so is there any other part of the Capital Group or GovTech insurance company story that you haven't told or would like to share? And this question goes out to both you, Kevin, and Eric. Is there anything we missed today in this conversation?
Well, we covered a lot here in the last 20 minutes, and I appreciate you giving us this platform and asking very insightful questions. Our role is to support those who support the government and continue to push that important mission forward.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your story. And I was excited by having the class poster. I don't think that anyone in the insurance industry has a poster of the class in their background. So I knew it was going to be an interesting interview because, it was I enjoyed your time, and we wish you the best of luck going forward. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Kevin.
Same here. Thank you very much, sir.